Good morning. We wish to call to order the November 29th, 2023 meeting of the Monroe County Board of Commissioners. I will note for the record that Commissioner Thomas and I are present in the Nat U Hill room. Start with a public statement. We, the Monroe County Board of Commissioners, renew our commitment to welcome and protect the rights of all people, regardless of age, race, color, creed, disability, sexual orientation, gender identity, marital status, economic status, and national origin. And we affirm the right of every person to live peacefully and without fear. And we will fight and resist at every step discrimination and harmful policies, whatever their source. We also stand in support of our county public school systems, both RBB and MCCSC. And with that, we'll go to department updates, and we'll start with Ms. Kelly. Good morning.
Good morning. Just a few updates for you today. So according to the Indiana Department of Health website, COVID-19 cases and wastewater concentration levels have increased as of November 21st. Influenza-like illnesses, which include a fever of 100 degrees or higher, along with a cough or sore throat, have seen increased reports statewide with both healthcare providers and emergency rooms. The CDC does recommend that all individuals aged 6 months and older, except in rare circumstances, receive an annual flu shot. We do have flu shots, updated COVID vaccines, and RSV for adults 60 and older at our public health clinic on 333 Miller Drive, and you can call 812-353-3244.
Thank you. Comments or questions?
No.
I think you also, at a previous meeting, told us that the health department's website has information about where people locally can get vaccines. Is that correct?
That is correct, and we are currently updating that information every Monday. So the most recent information is currently on there, and it takes you to all of the area providers, Walgreens, CVS, Sam's Club, like that.
Excellent.
Okay.
Thank you.
Great.
Appreciate
Thanks.
that. Are there other department updates? What?
Revise the agenda.
Oh, yes, sorry. We need to revise the agenda.
Yeah, I'm gonna make a motion to amend our agenda to add item F, the Monroe County, Indiana American Rescue Plan Act Policy Revision number 8.
Second. I don't think there's anything to discuss, so we need to vote. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Amendment passes 2-0. I wanted to ask TSD if you have that really short video queued up about Pantry 279. If so, could you go ahead and share it with everyone right now?
Thanksgiving is a box of food that you can take home and cook on Thanksgiving Day for your families. I like to feed people. I know food is my love language, I guess you would say. I like to know you're not hungry. And it bothers me when I see people hungry. It really does. Do you want pumpkin? And we ask for volunteers, and they come in and they help us set all this up. And we've been packing boxes and pulling orders and getting everything ready to go. The only way to do this and not have a line down to Walmart is we have to hit it 2 ways. You can come in and do a drive-through, which will put you all the way around the fairgrounds, or you can park over here in the parking lot and come in and shop for your food and pick what you want. We asked them for Thanksgiving for this one day, how many people are you feeding on Thanksgiving? Because we want to encourage them to invite their family members, to invite their friends, to have that camaraderie that we always have during the holidays. If we can alleviate some of that stress so that you could have bonding time with your family and friends, which is incredibly important, then yay, we have accomplished our job.
Thank you, TSD. I just wanted to share that because we were able to use some of the American Rescue Plan Act money to make that possible. Again, that was 2,693 families, 19,689 people, and additionally, they made deliveries to 407 households. Not included in that number was the fact that donations were made to the Rise and to some homeless folks. So I think it's important to acknowledge the work that's being done in our community. Of course, Pantry 279 is not the only food pantry that's been out there helping people and doing it for many years. So at this point, I think it would be good if we gave the community an update on our visit to Franklin County Jail in terms of what we saw, what our impressions were. We are trying to move forward, and this was another step in that. Would you like to start?
Yep, so we were at Franklin County, Ohio, which is Columbus, Ohio, and this is a much bigger facility than what we're going to be building. So you always have to, when you look at aspects of the facility, you always have to kind of, in your mind at least, think about how you could make the scale smaller to fit what we need. So one part of the facility's been completed. They're on phase 2A, 2B, and they're continuing to move forward. And it was fascinating to see the kinds of priorities that were determined to be important for this facility. There were a number of examples of direct supervision, which we really learned a lot about.
Yes. We were taken into a housing unit and weren't told anything about the males that were in there, but there were a couple of female staff members working in it and a social worker. They had 2 programming rooms, and each inmate was given a task to do for that week, whether it was cleaning the floors, cleaning the tables, distributing the food. I mean, it was just a whole variety of things, but it changed every week. And then they also had very structured day activities, which kept them busy for at least 6 hours out of the day. There was a dedicated recreation area. They had things like yoga mats. They did yoga once a week. But if you wanted to do the yoga on your own after you'd learned some of the stuff, you could at different points of the day. And they were responsible for keeping the entire unit clean. There was a single jail staff member in there. He was sitting at a kind of a raised area with a laptop or with a computer, and there was a lot of cameras. The individuals who were in there had access when they weren't doing their structured time to the rec area, and one of the people came over and chatted with us. Mm-hmm. And it was just remarkable. He was talking about, we got to keep this place cleaned up. You know, it reminds me of being around my 2-year-old, and it was just a very, very comfortable situation. And after we left, we were told about those inmates. There were 34 men in that unit at the time. 14 of them were up on charges for murder, and the rest were on charges for serious felonies. And I did not feel the least bit uncomfortable being in there. Yeah. I felt safe, I felt secure, and the staff person who showed us around gave us some startling statistics. He said that where there's direct supervision, you see 80% less inmate on inmate assaults, and you see 80% less inmate on staff assaults. Mm-hmm. And you know, we've chatted about this just in our observations that, you know, before being there, I thought direct supervision was really just for low-level offenders, people that were just going to be there for a few days while they waited to be arraigned. And boy, this was different. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And I think what we saw in Arizona was they were using direct supervision and some intensive regulated programming for folks who had a 1-year sentence. And so I think we made the assumption that group of folks who would be eligible for
Right.
that kind of and it really makes a difference. Really makes a difference in the staff and also with the inmates. So it was great to see that warehousing isn't the only option, and especially with the higher level felony accusations or allegations. So that was very helpful. But it was also good to see how they established their the layout of the facility and the kinds of decisions that they made along the way. Everything from laundry and food and everything else that you could imagine that has to go into it. And the intake area was interesting as well, I thought. A different order of processing than what we've seen before. So gives us a lot to think about in terms of the design.
And I know locally, our local jail commander and sheriff have set up a sort of a mental health unit, which they also were building. It had been built, they just hadn't moved people in when we were in there at that point. But there was no individual cells. There was sort of a pseudo division between two sides, but you could go back and forth. But there were just sort of half privacy walls for where you slept. And there was no two-tier beds that we saw any place. And it just was very, very open. And they had murals up as part of the calming things, natural light. They had just, I don't know. We've gotten a lot of pushback, I guess, here locally from Care Not Cages, and these did not feel like cages. Yes, we're incarcerating people, but with a different attitude.
A focus on the care.
Focus on the care.
And the portion of the facility that had already been built and was already being utilized, it was great to have folks there from facilities maintenance, ASI, and to have them look at how things are holding up, and they were holding up really well. So that, because they had gone earlier.
Yes.
And seen that same facility just as it was being built. So that first phase. So that was really helpful.
Yes.
And the maintenance side of it is so important.
Oh, we get hit with all the problems that we have at our current facility. Yes. But even the women's area that has not been opened up yet, there were not individual cells. Yes, there's lights out, but it's just, again, this direct supervision model that requires some self-discipline, but also a sense of community. And I think that we heard that word community multiple times while we were in the facility.
Yeah. And what's interesting too is that in the sleeping quarters area, they actually don't have access to that all day long. It's only for sleeping, and then you can go back and get an item, but it's not a place to stay. It's not, sleeping and recreation focused. It's really focused on classes and programs and mental health treatment and support as folks are getting clean. So there's a lot of programming that goes on, and the programming that we learned about was everything from responsibility to English language to it was a span. It was a whole span of programming. So it was very interesting.
Mindfulness, the yoga that we talked about. And they also had some of the same challenges that we've been discussing in terms of transportation. And they had figured out a system where they would have a shuttle that would take people to one of 4 kind of main bus terminals, and they would provide them then with the bus fare and transfer for the day, so that when folks are released, they're not just walking out of the facility. So I think they were facing some of the same challenges, but as you said, on a different scale. I think when I think back to the mental health kind of area that was built, it reminded me of the crisis center that we viewed in Tucson, Arizona, and down in Maricopa County. And so I think that they're incorporating some of the things that we've all talked about and that we all want to see in our community.
Yeah. It's really great to see some of those things that we've read about, talked about, actually being implemented and how it works.
Right. Yeah. Right. And they're for their one other comment, for their medical area, they actually made the area feel like a waiting room, and they had the cubicles that looked like an emergency department, basically, for privacy. They had a separate room for obstetrical kind of exam stuff. So just the thoughtfulness that went into this. So it was important, I think, that we went. But they also said the person that was overseeing their transition, Captain Commander Thompson. Anyway, he talked about the number of different places they had gone to see, like out in Larimer County, Colorado, which is where Fort Collins is, which also has a university, that they had gone up to Michigan, that they had gone, I forget where else, but multiple places as they made their decisions.
And did some training in Michigan, Washtenaw County, Ann Arbor.
Yes.
Yes. It's really good visit.
Yes.
Learned a lot.
Yes. We're very grateful to them for giving us our time.
Yeah, huge thanks.
Yeah. So anyway, is there any, now that we've given our department update, is there any other department with an update? Seeing none, we'll move on to public comment. This is for items not on the agenda. We ask speakers to limit their comments to 3 minutes and to not only state their name, but whether or not they're a Monroe County resident. So is there anyone who wishes to speak? Seeing none, let's move on to approval of the minutes.
I move approval of the minutes for November 15th, 2023.
I'll second. Did you have any corrections or comments?
No, I watched the meeting, so.
Oh, great, fabulous.
After the fact.
Okay, so you do know whether or not it was true to what was said. Great. Okay, well, with that, call for a vote on approval of minutes for November 15th, 2023. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Motion passes 2-0. Next item.
I move approval of the claims docket, accounts payable November 29th, 2023, and payroll for December 1st, 2023.
I'll second, and we have Mrs. Miller. Good morning, Megan.
Good morning. The accounts payable claims docket for November 29th, 2023 totals $3,475,393.92. This includes all emergency claims and adjustments. The payroll docket for December 1st, 2023 includes $1,346,241.05 in direct costs, and the remaining $570,873.63 were for indirect costs, for a grand total of $1,917,114.68.
Thank you. Questions or comments, Commissioner Thomas?
I think Mr. Cockrell has an amendment.
Yes. After the claims went to the auditor's office, we received the closing statement for the IRA purchase, and that is for $752.50. They are planning on closing on Friday, so I would ask that when you approve the claims, you approve the claims for that so that we can make sure that purchase for IRA, and this is connected with the health grant that we received probably, I think we got the documentations and approved it a month or two ago. So this is part of that program and it's included in that grant.
I move that we amend the claim to reflect what Mr. Cockrell's just outlined.
Okay, and this is for the Indiana Recovery Alliance for them to purchase a building that they will then be renovating for all of the outreach that they do, harm reduction related to substance use disorder. But yes, I fully support this. Is there any public comment on either the claims or, oh, we need to vote on the amendment, don't we? Yes. Is there any public comment on the amendment? Seeing none, I'll call for a vote on the amendment to add $335,752.50 to our claims. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Motion passes on the amendment 2-0. Is there any public discussion on the claims or payroll? Seeing none, I'll call for a vote. All those in favor of accounts payable for November 29th, 2023 and payroll December 1st, 2023 signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Motion passes 2-0. I'll note for the record that we have reports from the treasurer for October 2023 and clerk of the court for October 23. And now we'll move on to new business.
I move approval of the 2024 Department of Correction Community Corrections Grant Contract, fund names Community Corrections, Pretrial Services, Drug Court, Mental Health Court, fund numbers 9142, 9144, 9148, and 9150 in a grant amount of $1,528,120.
Second, and we have Ms. Strite on virtually. Please go ahead.
Hi, good morning. This is Becca Strite, Community Corrections Director and Deputy Chief Probation Officer. I apologize I can't be there in person. This contract is going to be our 40th year of community corrections programming. The Department of Correction funds for 2024 just over $1.5 million, which goes towards staff salaries and benefits. The Department of Correction funding funds our pretrial services program, mental health court, drug treatment court, and community corrections programs, which include our home detention. It also helps support our evidence-based practices and continuous quality improvement efforts. All of our probation officers are trained in evidence-based cognitive behavioral interventions, which we use to help our clients change their thinking, which helps change their behavior. So these grant funds help support those efforts, which is what the crux of what we do over at Probation and Community Corrections every day. And then I do want to note that the funding was flatlined for 2024 by the state, so we are receiving the same amount that we received last year. However, this occurred throughout the entire state. The Department of Correction did not provide any increase in funding for any counties for 2024. But I will be back in early 2024 to provide my annual 2023 report to you, which will highlight in better detail everything that we've been doing in 2023 and specifically how we've been using these grant funds. So thank you.
Thank you. Questions or comments?
As always, great work. You get so much accomplished with so little funding. This sounds like a lot of money, but it's disappointing that there wasn't an increase in the funding for next year, but hopefully things will change. Look forward to the report. Thanks to you and your staff.
And just for a bit of information, for the drug court that's being supported next year, they will celebrate their 25th anniversary of making a difference in our community.
It's awesome.
Yeah, it is. It really is. We're lucky to have that. Is there any public comment on these items? Seeing none, I'll call for a vote on the 2024 Department of Corrections Community Corrections Grant Contract. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Motion passes 2-0. Thank you, Ms. Stripe, for being with us.
Thanks so much.
Next item.
I move approval of Disaster Recovery Service Agreement Renewal for 2024. Fund name Recorders Perpetuation Fund, fund number 1189 in the amount of $2,170.74.
I'll second it, and we have Recorder Swain with us. Good morning.
Good morning. How are you both?
Cold.
I would have to agree with that. So when disaster happens, there are two components that We need to think about, one is business continuity, so that we can continue to do business during that disaster, and our continuity of operations plan addresses that. This morning, we need to talk about disaster recovery, so we can go back and recover documents previously recorded to have that clear chain of title. And because of the role that the Recorder's Office plays in land records management, disaster recovery is a vital consideration for our community. Computer Systems Inc., or CSI, is our current software provider, and they store our data and images in the CSI Cloud backup. And so within 4 hours of us notifying them in the event of a disaster, they can restore that database to our local servers so that we have those past documents to refer to for cross-references in current documents and other things like that. If this is not possible, they would give us access in the cloud system to only our data, so it is protected, and we could go back and look at the documents that way. And this is something that we have done with them before, and so this is just an annual renewal of that agreement with them for disaster recovery services.
Questions or comments? Oh.
I'm so sorry. But I've asked Greg to have a look at this. Is Greg aware of this?
He is.
I know that there was some issues with the CSI and, you know, their involvement in the maintenance of our computers, because we already have that with our TSD.
Right, and that's, Angie, that's actually a separate agreement that I don't have on the agenda. I was going to do that next week after Greg and we've been talking for the past several days about that. And so this is a totally separate agreement. There's actually also a software agreement that we do every year and redaction services. So there's several components with CSI. So that is being addressed with him. So thank you for bringing that up.
Certainly. But I'm just a little concerned that CSI will restore the software to our local production. They don't get that permission. So that was my concern. Why I asked Greg to potentially respond.
Right, and they work very closely with TSD when they need to make updates. We just updated from the Title I software from version 4 to version 5 when we got our new credit card processor. They did that all at once. And so it usually requires an admin login that TSD has to provide. And so they do work very closely, and it is regulated.
Yeah, so I just, normally our TSD director, you know, has an opportunity to really look at these. And given that I was aware of another concern when I saw the language of restored to our local production server, it caused me pause. And I felt like that needs to be clarified as to what that actually entails.
That's interesting. I read this and I saw, okay, they're storing data and we can access that data if we lose it due to a disaster. So the question you're raising is, how is that data restored?
Correct. And I ran out to call Greg, and I don't know if he's available. TSD, can you see as Greg stopped onto the...
I'm here. Can you hear me?
Okay.
And we could always postpone the vote on this until next week if that would. Yeah. So that would allow time for.
It's still timely for you if we get it done before the end of the year.
Absolutely, because this is for 2024.
Great.
Thank you.
I'm here.
There
we go.
Oh, there he is.
There's
Mr. Crone.
We just dropped into Greg's office. Yes.
So Greg, we're talking about the disaster recovery services that we have with CSI, where they store our database in the cloud, and within 4 hours of notification, they could restore our database to the local server. So there were questions raised about how they would gain access to the local server, and the relationship that they have currently with TSD. I talked about the recent update of the software that we currently have and how that needs an admin login. But is there anything else that you would like to review on this disaster recovery agreement?
I would actually, since I haven't had a chance to go over the packet, and one thing that CSI needs to be aware of is since we've changed policies as far as how vendor access works, it's no longer unfettered VPN access. It's actually a tended console deal we have to do. So there might be a few things we want to discuss with them before we finalize this.
Okay, and we do have time, like I said, because this is a renewal of the agreement for 2024. And since we have upcoming meetings, I'm happy to work with Greg to help review the agreement and then make any updates as needed, and then resubmit this for perhaps next week.
Okay, that's great. We get to see you again too, so that's always good. I'm gonna move to table this item on disaster recovery service agreement renewal for 2024, and that will be tabled until the December 6th meeting. God, it sounds so far away.
Yes, I'll second that. Thank you.
Thank you.
We'll get it worked out. Thanks.
Okay, sounds good.
Okay, next item.
I move approval of an advertising service contract, fund name Health, fund number 1159, in the amount of $2,661.12.
Second, and we have Ms. Kelly back.
Yes, so this is just in an effort to help increase awareness and education to the public for respiratory illnesses over the next few months into February. So the goal is to be able to spread awareness about influenza, RSV, COVID, and ways that we can protect ourselves and others.
Thank you.
And I would assume that you already send out public service announcement texts to various news outlets, media outlets as well. But clearly those are few and far between when they're actually offered. So that's why you're doing this advertising. Is that?
Yes, just gives us another channel to kind of help to be able to educate the public.
Yeah, that makes sense. It's worthwhile and it's not terribly expensive. So.
Right, and I hadn't quite understood everything in the packet about how it's billed, and so I'm grateful to Ms. Kelly for responding to me on that. Thank you.
Of course.
Is there any public comment on this item? Seeing none, I'll call for a vote on the request for approval of an advertising service contract. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Motion passes 2-0. Thank you, Ms. Kelly.
Thank you.
Next item.
Move approval of ordinance 2023-47, approving interlocal agreement with the city regarding the capital improvement board.
Second, and we have Mr. Cockrell.
Yes, this was discussed last night at the council meeting, and I'll kind of give the similar presentation I gave last night in going back through the history of how this came to be. I think it's important to note that the vast majority of things in this document were in a document that we had on our servers from 2019, 2020, before the pandemic, when we were approaching this level of understanding at that point in time. And then of course we all know the pandemic hit, and then this project of the convention center expansion kind of got put on hold. And then when we restarted the conversations last fall, we talked about it, and I think working with the city, we came to the conclusion that the CIB was indeed the right mechanism, but we needed to work out some of the issues. I believe the commissioners passed an ordinance creating the CIB last November, and it gave a deadline of the end of December before to get it approved. It didn't ultimately get approved, but we got information from the city that led to, kind of revisiting this whole interlocal idea. And that's why we went back to the 19 document, because we were talking about the same issues back then. And so in my mind, the biggest item that this covers is the fact that both the city council and the county council have to approve the budget for both for the operation and use of the convention center and the CVC and essentially the whole tourism industry. And so to me, that's the big component of this. And I think everybody agrees to that. So it's not the one that's most talked about, but I stressed it last night. I want to stress it today that I think that's the biggest component of this document. We had, what I've heard the most about are kind of the two issues that are in the executive summary, which is one, how the CVC appointments were to be made, because as this document evolved, we had a group that included the president of the city council, president of the county council, and the president of the commissioners meet to come up with a version of the draft. And then late spring, early summer, we distributed that, and we met with the city council, we met with the county council. And so we had a version, and then the mayor had some comments and some things that he wanted to see changed. Commissioner Githens and I worked with city staff and Greg Goodnight to kind of work through some of those. But there was one that we just couldn't get any agreement on, and that was the CVC appointment for I call it the unrestricted appointment, the free agent appointment, the one that doesn't, all the other appointments for the CVC either have to be the president of or associated with the union, or the owner or general manager of a hotel with 40 beds or more in the community. So that fifth one was kind of historically has been a county council representative, but that was the one that group couldn't resolve. I think the Commissioner Githens wanted to just let the county council continue to have that. The city wanted it to be involved in some kind of process. So that got pushed to the city and the county council to come up with a solution, because it wasn't going to happen with that group. And it involved the county council's appointment and the city council's ability to influence that appointment. So what they came up with is, and I'm looking at it because I got some confusion last night because what they came up with was the third appointee who is not subject to the statutory restrictions, the unrestricted appointment shall be made by the county council from a list of 4 recommendations made by the city council. So that's what the 2 presidents came up with. The county council did not approve this last night, and so the full council's opinion on that has not been spoken for at this point. The other controversial, or somewhat controversial, has to do with the not-for-profit holding the land during the bonding process. And as I explained to the county council last night, we have utilized that mechanism for our current convention center. We have utilized that mechanism for when we did the jail in the 80s. We still have that building corporation. It's a mechanism found in state law that allows large projects to occur without a implication on the state constitutional debt limit. And so in order for that to work, a outside entity has to have ownership of it, with the lease payments made to that outside entity matching the debt payment that outside entity has to have. So that is the genesis and the reason for that provision in this. When this was placed on your agenda, I think the thought was that the county council would then would have made a decision on, as a group, and given you thoughts on the CVC and whether that appointment meets their criteria. And I think that was intentional, that we wanted them to be able to speak on that, because we wanted to have assurances that met their criteria. I think they also asked a few other questions, which I don't have my notes from last night on me, but they involved could the city council recommend people outside the city limits to serve on there, and it also wanted me to look at some of the language from the ordinance establishing the CIB, and this as regards to who would be eligible members for the CIB as well. Those are the two I remember off the top of my head. I think there were a few more. So that's kind of the update from last night. And there are a lot of provisions in here. A lot of them I think are common sense. But the ones I've heard that people had questions about I've already addressed.
Questions, Commissioner Thomas?
I have a lot of questions. The first question I have, though, is general, and that is there anything preventing us from delaying a decision on this? In other words, it's not going to impact the ability of the CIB to operate if we don't approve this year even.
Well, I'm not aware. I don't think the CIB is in any position to issue debt at this point. They've got a lot of work to do. I think this definitely has to be done before then. Right. I'm not going to tell you the sooner the better is not the case for this, but I can tell you, I mean, you said the end of the year. I'm not sure about the end of the year, but I'm certain that if the council doesn't approve it, it's not approved. And so it's certainly, if you approved it today, it certainly couldn't be approved in totality until December 12th. And so not acting today does not affect, it won't go into effect tomorrow if you approve it today. It needs that council approval as part of it. And I still believe in the sentiment that I think that the council needs to look at the CBC appointments first. And I'm not really comfortable with you guys, unless you guys are. I mean, this is me as staff, but that was kind of what we were planning. We were planning for the council to address that issue because that was the final issue there was disagreement on. And until they've approved it, I'm not sure they have. I don't know if there was a lot of discussion on that last night. There was some, but there wasn't any kind of formal vote or even a consensus gathering that, we were comfortable with that or not. Clearly some were, clearly at least one was not, I guess is the easiest way to sum that up. But I do think it's a good document. I think that I think that answering the council's questions is probably important to make sure they understand it before. And then you guys probably would want the same. Some of your questions are probably the same questions the council had last night. So getting those answers to you guys before you approve it seems important to me. And like I said, not approving it today does nothing with the timeline, right? And if the council decides to approve it on the 12th, you approving it on the 13th is not going to affect the timeline either.
Right. I guess the crux of the question I had, you've addressed, which is this document needs to be passed before debt can be issued. And that's the real timeline here.
I would think that if debt was issued prior to this, that would put the city in a really tough position. Yeah. And I don't think that's fair to do this.
Right. Okay. So, so we can pump the brakes a little bit, which is good. And we do have a lot to think through. I'm not sure I understand why, for example, the decision was made to have a different system for that free agent, I love that term, player on the CBC. I also have a general question, and I'm not sure this was raised last night. If it was, I missed it. But there's nothing in this document on the building corporation's membership, and is there anything precluding having a building corp that has a membership that includes city and county appointments?
That's a bond council question. and I'm not bond counsel, my off-the-cuff response is that there's nothing I'm aware of that would have that implication. I actually, as we were going through the process, says we already have a building corporation in place, and and if they wanted to utilize that, I don't think there'd be any objections.
So I guess that would be a question I would ask that bond counsel address, because I think it's an important one. There are a lot of shalls and mays and bits and pieces in here that I'm not entirely comfortable with in terms of ensuring that this is a project that reflects both county and city interests. And that's the basis of my concern for that. So I'll hand it back to you.
I would like to invite some public comment before I say anything, because I think we do have some people here that are here specifically to speak on this. So if you wish, please come up to the mic and state your name. And I will say that we have heard from members of the public who've provided new insight for me on a few things. So yes.
Good morning.
Good morning.
John Weichert. I'm a member of your Capital Improvements Board by your appointment. I'm president of the board. Here this morning only representing myself. I'm certainly not here representing the 7 members of the board. Eric Spoonmore is also here, and Eric may have comments, I don't know. I'm reminded, and I don't mean this to be critical, I'm reminded that there's a story that God assigned a committee to create a horse. And when they were finished, they presented the design of a camel. And it wasn't that they were not well-meaning in doing that. It's just that sometimes people on committees have various things they're looking at, others are not. I know this was a very complicated issue. I know the county, I don't speak for the county council, obviously. I know their interest, as I understand it, was in the CVC appointments, perhaps not in other areas in particular. I'm retired, so I can read stuff, and I obsess over stuff. So I can read the interlocal agreement, and I can read your ordinance, and then just mull over it. So that's how I stand before you this morning. It strikes me that there are a couple of questions I would encourage you to look at. One is that it appears to me that the interlocal agreement changes your CIB ordinance in terms of who's appointed to the CIB. There are new exclusions added. An exclusion you had has been taken out. And perhaps that was intentional, perhaps it was not, but I would encourage you to give thought to whether that's what you actually intended. The CIB ordinance gave to the CIB the authority for, among other things, management and operations of the convention center. The interlocal agreement would initially transfer that management and operations to the nonprofit city building corporation. I think implied is that the CIB will be so busy with construction and design that management and operations may be something that can be forestalled until a later date. And I would suggest that we're quite capable of walking and chewing gum at the same time. And that originally in the CIB ordinance, we were given that task. In our very first meeting, we said we had no intention of doing anything other, frankly, than maintaining the status quo in terms of management and operations. So I don't know why, perhaps you do, why that would be assigned for a period of time to a building corporation. Then with language that says when it's reasonably practicable, it will be reassigned to us in a negotiated contract. So I would suggest the CIB is quite capable of managing and operating the facility without that back and forth 2-year, what could be a 2-year process of switching that back and forth. Commissioner Thomas mentioned the assignment to the building corporation. The interlocal agreement goes to great pains to say who's going to be assigned to the CIB and what their terms are and who makes those appointments. Attempts to do the same thing with the CVC in terms of who makes appointments and their terms. it's silent about the building corporation. I certainly don't question Mr. Cockrell's legal expertise. I admire it as a matter of fact, but he said he didn't see anything that precluded appointments being suggested. So I would be curious as to why you wouldn't want to further negotiate who was appointed to the building corporation. After all, you're transferring ownership of your building to the city building corporation for a 20 to 30 year period of time. I don't know why you couldn't have a process similar to the one for CIB appointments, where the commissioners and the county council and the mayor and the city council make appointments to a building corporation with another appointee decided in some other fashion. And I would think, I would question why you wouldn't want to think about that, whether that wouldn't be something to consider anyway. So those were things that came to my attention as I read it. I would like to report to you that I think the CIB is making extraordinary progress very quickly. We've met, we've obviously selected our 7th member, we've retained an attorney to represent us. Mr. Spoonmore is working on a controller. We have the architects coming to meet with us at our December meeting. I'm encouraged that all parties have said to us, basically, let's not reinvent the wheel here. Let's continue these relationships with the architects that we've had. Let's look and see if we can pick up where we left off and move forward. We don't need to reinvent the wheel, and that's certainly not our intention. But we are happy to have been appointed. We're happy to serve you, and I simply wanted to suggest you might want to consider some of those things a little further, especially when you have an opportunity. It strikes me that the mayor issued a press release that implied this was a done deal. When the city council had their presentation, I think they were very enthusiastic that they thought it was an agreement. It strikes me that it's still a document that's perhaps a work in progress, and I would encourage you to think about that. So thank you for your time.
Thank you, Mr. Weichert, and for serving on the CIB. Yes. We really appreciate that.
Thank you.
And I would just note for the record, I noticed that his time had run out, but since he was a member of the CIB, and much like Mr. Spoonmore, since he's a member of the CIB, we typically do not limit the time for our board members to come and make comments about things under their purview.
I appreciate that, yes.
And I'd also like to just potentially correct one thing, is that the document never gives the operation and management of the facility to that third-party entity. It is retained with with the city or with the county and the CVC contract until a point in time where the construction is completed. Then it would be transferred to the CIB. So that it never lands with the not-for-profit 501c3.
Okay, thank you. And here we have Mr. Spoonmore.
Good morning, Commissioners. Eric Spoonmore, President of the Greater Bloomington Chamber of Commerce, also the County Council's appointment to the Capital Improvement Board, and very proud Monroe County resident. I appreciate all of Mr. Weichert's remarks. I won't reiterate too much of that. I do want to say thank you to the County Council last night for their very thoughtful approach that they're taking to this agreement. I think it's very refreshing to see a gesture of goodwill to Mayor-elect Thompson, and I hope that we can get as much of her input as possible as well, because she will be in charge of executing this well into the future along with the commissioners. So appreciated seeing that. I think, with any type of agreement like this with such magnitude and importance on this very long-awaited convention center expansion, it's good to take some time. And I don't see this as a member of the Capital Improvement Board and as a strong advocate for the convention center expansion as through the Chamber of Commerce. Don't see any concerns with taking a little bit of time. I think you're asking some very valid, legitimate, good questions. And I'm just very pleased with the progress that we continue to make with the convention center. Mr. Weichert was exactly correct. We're making great strides. We're working well together under his leadership as president of the Capital Improvement Board. And I know that we're going to get to the finish line with this project that the community is going to be very proud of. So thank you for all of your thoughtfulness and work on this. And we're here to support in any way that we can. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Smoothmore. Is there anyone else that would like to make public comment? Well, I would like to cover a few items. I listened, I was here last evening when the county council discussed this, and one of the issues that was raised is membership on the CIB, whether or not it should also exclude members of the RDC, especially since the RDC purchased the land that's just to the north of the current convention center, and may not make some of the same decisions that a non-RDC person would make. And whether or not we need to add that as an exclusion to who could be part of this. So that's one thing that came up. There were questions about the appointment to the unrestricted member of the CBC. There was a discussion about the fact that it has been, of course, as Mr. Cockrell said, a member of the county council, because they do have a vested interest in ensuring that the innkeeper's tax is appropriately allocated. And that's part of the responsibility of the CBC. And Councilmember Hawk pointed out that this, by law, is council appointment. And she felt that anything restricting that was inappropriate. And so there were questions about that. Mm-hmm. And there was a question about why the wording was different for the restricted appointments, where it says that county council shall consider the city recommendations in good faith, and why that's not included in that second part. With regard to the building corporation, I want to ensure that that whatever building corporation exists for this expanded convention center, that it cannot be folded into the current city building corporation, which they have, which oversees the Waldron and the Buskirk Chumley and several other things, I think. And I would like to see it written into here, the number of people who will serve on that board and who has the appointments to that board specifically. It's been suggested by people that I've listened to, at least, that the county commissioners have one appointment, that we have 5 members, where county council has an appointment, the commissioners have an appointment, the mayor has an appointment, city council has an appointment, and then, as was suggested by Mr. Weichert, that then the 5th person be appointed by those existing 4. I also don't see anything, and this would be related to bond council and things that Mr. Cockrell knows about. I don't know what those terms would be on that board.
And along those lines, membership issues of what other building corps or other related entities can they be members of? Because that's a cross, I would say contamination, but it's a cross-contamination issue. You have to be really careful to ensure that they're insular, these entities, that they don't have, one person who's on 4 or 5 of them and really holds so much more power than the others, the other members. So,
yes. So, and I appreciate the fact that people have read this thoroughly. I had made other notes and then left my copy at home, so I apologize for that. But I think, if I remember correctly, those were my main issues. Then finally, one of the things that we heard last night was, once the expansion occurs, once the bond to do the expansion is paid off, if it ever comes to a point where the parties no longer wish to cooperate, how will this then be dissolved? And Mr. Cockrell alluded to that last night, but it was in a way that I didn't quite understand. So I
think that needs to be spelled out.
And again, these are things that we heard about after this was made public, after the document was made public. And so these are not things that we are not acting in good faith on, but they are things that when you have more minds working on something, you often get a better outcome with stuff.
Mhm.
So, Mr. Cockrell, did you want to say anything else?
No, I was taking notes.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah. I share the concern that was expressed last night, but I do share the concern that we may be treading where we should not go in terms of amending and adjusting the intent of state statute regarding CVC membership. And I don't understand why it was written that way when the other membership positions were not written that way. So why is it that you have to pick from what they want versus good faith effort to consider? Oh yeah, that to me, I don't understand.
Well, but also, the way this is written right now, it excludes a member of the county council from serving on the CVC.
Right, it does. And I don't know that that's what we want to have happen. And I think I would like to hear from county council members about whether or not that's a good move or not. I mean, they could always liaison and be there, but not having a vote makes a difference. And so I think I would want some input to hear some things from the county council about that. It is unfortunate that this was announced as a done deal because I don't know where that came from, but it's not, and it shouldn't be. And we need to make sure that we are not revising parts of the CIB that we've already agreed to in that agreement. And we need to make sure that we're following state statute, and we need to make sure that we have a plan and exit strategy if we need it. I think there are things that are spelled out here that have already been written in the CIB, so I'm not sure why they're reiterated. But there are also a lot of things that needs further explanation and clarification and specification and detail. So looking forward to seeing where this goes. I certainly am hopeful that we can get something done at the end of the year or early next year.
Well, I think since we have questions, and I think that perhaps we would want amendments to what we are looking at right now, that we take time to figure out what those amendments might be, and then bring this back.
Mm-hmm.
Does that seem appropriate? I mean, like I said, we have heard from members of the public, and that has shifted my thinking on some of this.
Could I just, one of the principles we were looking at when we were drafting this version of it was to give the CIB the ability to manage a lot of things. So I think a lot of, the lack of details is not necessarily unintentional, right? So a lot of the lack of details was we want the CIB to be able to handle those kind of things. And I think it's in the final version, but let me double check.
I mean, I get that, and I don't argue with that. I think my concern is with the composition of the building corp, which the CIB has no part in, and there are other things that need.
And certainly with the compensation of the building corp, that's different, right? Mm-hmm. This document was intended to be able to say, here are who the leaders are, here are how we're going to find who the leaders are, and then let them lead. I mean, that is the basic goal of this agreement.
Yeah. And I'm grateful for the folks who are willing to serve on the building corp. The capital improvement board. Grateful for their work so far, and they are moving ahead very quickly, but not in a sloppy manner, in a very clear and precise manner. So I appreciate that. But and I do want them to have that ability to make these key decisions as we move forward. So I certainly don't want to step on those toes. So I appreciate that. That's a really good point. Thank you.
So at this point, I'd like to move that we table the discussion on ordinance 2023-47 to approve the interlocal agreement with the city regarding the Capital Improvement Board.
So that's a motion to continue it indefinitely. Because we don't have a date.
We don't have a date, right?
Okay,
Is that,
I second that.
okay, all right. Do we need to take comment on?
You don't, but what I intend to do with that is probably look at not doing it next week, but then potentially doing it after the council if they make a decision on the 12th to bring it back.
Okay, fabulous. Thank you. So all those in favor of tabling ordinance 2023-47 signify by saying aye. Aye. Motion to table passes 2-0. Next item.
I move approval of an amendment to the agreement for the Convention Center Management, fund name Convention Center Operating Fund, fund number 4005 in the amount of $420,000.
Second, Mr. Cockrell.
Yes, and this is the agreement we were just alluding to. This is agreement that with the county and the Downtown Bloomington Inc. to operate the convention center. That agreement allows for an increase on an annual basis, and this is the increase for 2024. I believe this has been approved by the county council during the budget session, and this is just updating that document to reflect the $35,000 a month payment, or a total of $420,000 for the year to DBI to continue their good work.
Excellent. Do we have any public comment?
Hi, Talisha Kopik with the Convention Center Management Company, Downtown Bloomington, Inc. And thank you all for all your attention to all the details, as we're looking at the future also. But for right now, this is 2024. We've got a full calendar, some pretty interesting conferences coming up, one with early childhood intervention, one a Midwest machinists and aerospace workers, environmental health organization, Indiana Municipal Electric Association, Solid Waste Management District of Indiana, and then Indiana Council of Mental Health Centers. So it's a variety. These are out-of-town folks that are coming here because they love coming to Bloomington, Monroe County, and Indiana University. And then also we have a full calendar of local events as well. Catalents, they're meeting today for 3 days, strategizing. And and it's becoming pretty crowded at times there. So we are looking forward to an expansion. Work closely with all the different groups to transition. And but for right now, we've loved working with the county commissioners for 33 years. It's gone very quickly. And so thank you very much for your consideration for this increase in this amount. It'll go primarily towards personnel expenses, health insurance.
Well, I don't think the public knows, but you and your crew are the folks that helped organize the Canopy of Lights.
Yes.
Which came off very nicely last week.
Well, thank you for your partnership with that as well. It's an important community tradition. So thank you.
Thank you.
Yes, thank you for your great work. Appreciate it, and it was a really great event last week. The Canopy of Lights. It was really great, and it was nice to have Hoosier Hills Food Bank there. So it was really good.
Right. Thank you. Is there any other public comment on this item? Seeing none, I'll call for a vote on the amendment to the agreement for the Convention Center Management. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Motion passes 2-0. Thank you for joining us. Next item.
I move approval of Monroe County, Indiana American Rescue Plan Act Policy Revision 8.
Second. And Mr. Cockrell, are you?
Yes, I can handle this. I believe. And it's been a long week because Monday night we discussed these items that I'm about to present. Last night, the county council appropriated the money for it. I think I'll start off with, my memory is that on page 1 of this, where it says Title I infrastructure, we placed that in there because Treasury guidelines changed in either August or September that allows the county to utilize up to $10 million of the restricted ARPA funds towards Title I infrastructure projects. And so we just wanted to reference that in our plan to make sure everybody's aware. But that is solely due to a change in how the Treasury is looking at this. So the more meat of the changes is there are 5 new proposed projects. And I will just go through them in order on this document. They start, and I clearly, since we didn't know about it till late last night, this has not been put out into the public, but we'll make sure that if it gets approved that we have it on our website. But for those referencing the document in the future, they start on at number 34. Our 34th project, which is included in this, is the Karst Park Fields, and this is to convert 2 fields at the Karst Athletic Complex to artificial turf, add LED lighting, and add LED lighting to an extra grass field, add irrigation and drainage, and retrofit lighting to LED on 2 existing grass fields. The project budget, the ARPA project budget of this is $3,750,000, and this would be a lost revenue project. I just remind you that we had a GO bond that has a $1.2 million in it that is going towards these corrections as well as I understand that yesterday that the CVC authorized $500,000 to go towards this project as well. Item 35, this is a jail transitional director, and this is for a contractual arrangement for the sheriff to assist with the increase in workload due to the new correctional facility. And that this is, the bulk of this is going to be helping them work with design and the transitional items that they need in order to make sure the facility is designed and that their policies match that facility design. This is also a lost revenue item, and the appropriated amount was $330,000. The next project is number 36, which is airport stormwater and drainage. On Monday, we received information from our airport director that there is a little over $100,000 worth of project that is necessary to maintain the safety of one of the taxiways, and it is directly related to drainage issues and their drainage system out there. And it also and I don't have the exact number, but it's about $620,000, doing quick math, because the total is for $720,000. So if that's about $100,000, this is for the study that would include a karst and sinkhole review. It includes looking at the entire watershed of the airport to make sure that the system, and we have a plan put in place to correct those things. As I told the council, and I think as I told the group on Monday, before I went out and looked around with various people, I was a little skeptical of this, but it is a much greater magnitude, and it's much more obvious of the issues out there than I would have expected. And so this is to do the planning. The hope is to get the plan back March or end of February or early March of next year, so that we can look at prioritizing projects with the potential of using additional ARPA funds for some of that stormwater work. So this would be considered part of the restricted funding for ARPA. Item 37 is the continuation of the rural transit service for the urbanized area outside municipal limits. And the project budget for this is $88,000. I guess there's a really long story about this, but I'm going to try to narrow it down to NDOT reported to Rural Transit that they're no longer able to perform these services in the urbanized area utilizing federal transit dollars. And so the conversation we've had with Bloomington Transit, Rural Transit, Town of Ellettsville, is looking at making sure this is to make sure nobody loses the services that they have in 2023 to 2024 based upon that policy change by the federal government. And it was based upon trips, cost per trips. I believe it's over 8,000 trips. So it's not a minor issue, but it's over 8,000 trips in the cost per trip, and that is based upon a information from Rural Transit for how much they would do it for, which was less than what the Bloomington Transit had quoted as well. So we've talked with both of them. Personally, I think this is a stopgap, and there's a bigger conversation about transit in the community, but this is solely to make sure people don't lose services they currently have. And then the last item is housing infrastructure. Project budget is $135,000. And this is we met in executive session to look at a site. This is to get some professional design to see what that site would look like to see if it'll work and if it'll work in the manner that we all expect it to, and to prepare documents so that we can work with planning and highway to make sure that we understand what the budget will be and moving forward with that. The one thing and I think I failed to mention it with the jail transitional director, the auditor's office and I have a call, and Angie Purdy have a call with Baker Tilly about that, because there is some concern that we need to make, well, there is a real issue that if we don't structure this correctly, then it would impair the ability to change if the person doesn't work out, or if the contract person leaves after end of 2024, but before the end of 2026, can we still utilize ARPA funds to cover that need through that time period? So that conversation hasn't happened. It's scheduled to happen tomorrow. So with the caveat that we're going to work on make sure that whatever agreement there is would allow this funding to be able to utilize for that full obligation period that we're allowed to. So I just want to kind of add that in to make sure. I know we talked about it before, so I thought it was important that you guys realize that we're having that conversation tomorrow.
Thank you. I want to ask procedural question. Can we vote and discuss on these one by one?
You can vote and discuss on these one by one. I guess the motion would be, I move to add number 34 or 35 to the list, and if they're not added, then what you will sign will have that removed.
Okay. And also with what you've just raised about the jail transition director contract, is it possible, I know last night that the council approved the $100,000 a year plus $10,000 for liability insurance per year. Is it possible to authorize that for 1 year at this point until we get that answer so that the sheriff's office can move forward?
I think you could. I guess since we're having such a short time frame, I think you could approve it contingent upon resolution of that issue. And so then they wouldn't have to come back, and we wouldn't have to change the plan. But if we get it resolved this week, you could do it either way.
If we just approved it, it would be considered contingent upon the resolution of that issue, because you can't make a contract without it. So, right?
Oh, we could make a contract. We're just running the risk of what would occur in 2025 if that position. I mean, ultimately, I think what you're approving is utilizing $330,000 for that purpose.
Right.
And so
it's all contingent.
actually, none of it's contingent, right?
But it all is.
The risk at the end of the day is if we had an agreement that went through 2026, it needs to be obligated by the end of 2024. If that contract was terminated in 2025, then you have de-obligated what we haven't spent, and then we have to send the money back to the federal government. So the whole reason to work out that issue is so we don't have to send any money back to the federal government.
My point is that if we approve this, it is toward this specific item, and we don't detail out, for example, with the other items on this list, how things are going to be spent, where they're going to be spent, that's always figured out later. Like, I don't really see that that's an issue.
I don't think it's an issue either.
Okay.
I think you can approve it. I think the issue is one that we'll resolve on hopefully tomorrow, and then we're free to move forward.
Okay, got it.
Okay, well,
I'd like to comment after we hear from the public.
Okay.
Personally.
okay, that's fine with me. So we'll go ahead and take public comment on these items. Yeah, first, I'm going to take them item by item for the public's consideration. So is there any public comment on the item to fund what's going on at Cars Farm Park with the soccer fields, and sometimes they're used as rugby fields and other things? Is there anybody who wishes to speak on that? Seeing none, is there anyone who wishes to speak on the jail transitional director position and the funding? Seeing none, is there anyone who wishes to speak on the airport stormwater drainage project? Seeing none, is there anyone who wishes to speak on the rural transit bus service? Seeing none, and what about for the housing infrastructure project? Okay, seeing none, so we'll go to commissioner comments and discussion.
I think I'll start off with the easiest things first. So I appreciate that the rural transit item is on this list. It is significant that this is on this list. And it is indeed a one-year measure. Hopefully some long-range planning can be done. We continue hopefully to meet with Bloomington Transit. I appreciated that we had the opportunity to talk to the Ellettsville Town Council on Monday. Councilor Deckard and I were there. And Ms. Myers from Rural Transit was there. And some interesting questions were raised, but I think my sense of it was that the town council members appreciate that we're not in a position to have the luxury of time to negotiate various details at this moment in terms of where the city is putting its 5307 funding, because they are supposed to be using that to help support transit in densely populated areas. And there's no plan right now for them to provide whatever portion of that money should be going to the county and the town of Ellettsville. I'm really grateful to Rural Transit and Ms. Myers. What she came up with is a package that was less expensive than what Bloomington Transit could offer at this moment. And it's the beauty of it is it will be seamless for our area residents. The town of Ellettsville will take on 80% of the costs, 60% of the costs, we're taking on 40% of the costs. So our total is 88,000. Their total will be 132. That's an estimate. Ms. Myers will be issuing monthly bills reflecting actual ridership to the county and to the town of Ellisville. So it's just for budgeting purposes that we have this number. So it may be more, it may be less. The council will have to address that if it's more. But for the residents, it's seamless. And that is the beauty of it. We're not moving them into a Lyft Uber system, calling different numbers, it's going to be, they can call the same place they're calling now and get service door to door.
And that includes for people that need special transports.
Exactly.
It uses the electric vehicles that we have.
Right.
Yes.
Yeah, exactly.
And this specifically is for 2024.
Yes.
Which is not written on our.
No, but it
list.
is, yes, it is just for, I think it's the writing, it says here to continue 2023 services.
Right.
But it's really for 2024. Yeah. Okay. So airport stormwater drainage, yes, let's get that done. I'm all over that. Housing infrastructure, great, let's do it. I have real concerns about the Karsh Park Fields, and I have real concerns about the jail transitional director, although I am inclined to let that go because it's not our business. It's between the council and the sheriff to figure that out. But my concern is that when we went to the pony training and there were people who kind of who attended the pony training but left and then came back and left and came back. So we didn't have everybody there the whole time. And one of the things they talked about was how this transition should go. And it should be and correct me if I'm wrong, but it should be that somebody who is already currently working in the jail starts spending time on the transition process, which is, programmatic design, et cetera. And then that transition process increases, that time commitment increases week by week. And the council needs to backfill those positions and ensure that as more people and time are needed to address those things, that will increase. So this number is not correct. I'm not sure I understand why we're using ARPA money. There's going to need to be a lot more money than this, and I don't think anybody's talked about that. That's disappointing. But I don't know what your thoughts are on this one.
So also going just sort of one by one, I'm completely in support of the housing infrastructure because one of the things that we are considering with that is some childcare. And so I really am happy about that. I'm thrilled that we're able to continue the rural bus transit service the way it's been. Like Mr. Cockrell, I went out to the airport on that tour and actually saw the problem with the runway, taxi area, and all the other areas where we're going to have to be repairing and putting in detention ponds, and it's huge. And
huge project.
And as I said Monday evening, it's not just that Indiana University and Cook and sort of people that like to fly their planes use that. People who work at Crane use that airport for their flights in and out. And that's, as we move forward with business development, that's going to be part of the critical things that go on in this whole region. And so it fits with what we're doing, working with the Bloomington Economic Development Corporation, with the Regional Opportunities Initiative, all kinds of things with that.
And if I might add, this is scratching the surface. There's going to be more coming.
Yes.
But this is all we can know that we can get done in this. And this is the most urgent thing. And it's within the time frame of ARPA.
Well, and as Mr. Cockrell pointed out, if we have the report to us next spring, we can go ahead and get contracted to do the actual work and have it spent out.
Yeah, I think it was obvious to everybody who were on that the $4 million may be a little short of all the needs for that project. So we wanted to make sure we had a good document that showed us what the needs are and what needs impacted and what they impacted, and so which one are prioritized.
Right. And it could be that if we haven't already allocated all of the ARPA money, that we'll choose to allocate a bit more.
Oh, yeah.
But no promises, Mr. Laverty, no promises, okay? I know you're watching. I would like to table approval of the Cars Farm Park fields until we have Commissioner Jones here with us. I've been at the park board meetings, and I know that they have set up a system where they are going to set aside money every year so that they know that in 10 to 20 years they have to replace that turf. Part of it depends upon the kinds of fillers that you're now putting into it. But I think it would be good if we got a lot more detail to present to the public.
Yeah. I have a request out to Ms. Whitmer. She hasn't received it yet because it was sitting in my outbox. But it's a listing of the kinds of information I think the public wants to see. This is a huge investment. I think it's a really worthwhile investment, but it is a huge investment. And part of it is easy. It's like, yeah, let's get the drainage fixed, let's get the lighting done. But this artificial turf is very expensive. This is a big part of our ARPA money. This is a big proportion of it. So, plus, thank goodness, CBC's contributing, plus. We've got bond money going into it. This is an expensive project. So what do area artificial turf fields go for rental? How much are we charging? How are we going to work? Is it going to be contract? Is it going to be one-by-one reserve system? What are we going to bill? What other amenities are we going to need? Do we need more parking? Do we need more restrooms? Do we need food service space? Like, what other things, staffing, what other things are going to come along with this? This is not just put the fields in there. There's going to be more expenses down the road. I want to know what those are. I'm sure the public would too. But just a year-by-year plan, revenue set aside for repair replacement, what you plan to take in, what you plan to spend. I just think we've heard it. I think we've heard all the information we've asked for, but I'd like to see it in writing.
I think that part of the savings that they're looking for is that it won't require mowing, so it won't require the staff or the fuel or whatever to do that. It will not require irrigation. Right. And that also, they spend a lot of money on water at Cars Farm Park.
Of course. And yes, and there is absolutely a savings, but at the same time, if you're having these large events, do you need more staffing for the event? Right. And that's different staffing than a mowing crew. Yeah. What do we need to plan for? How can we make sure that this is done right? And I think they have a lot of great ideas. I think I would like to see it all in one place in writing. So that the public has this information as well. So that email is going out. Sorry, Ms. Whitmer. But I would like, and I think it would be great to have Commissioner Jones here for this one as well. And there's nothing, because they have enough money to get started on parts of the project, like the drainage, I'm not so worried about delaying this and tabling this, continuing this maybe for a week or two. But I'm open to anything.
Yeah. With the final one with the jail transitional director, we know we need this position.
Yeah.
Absolutely need it.
Yeah.
Like you, I'm unhappy that council chose to pay for this out of ARPA funding. And I do want to make this contingent upon getting approval from Baker Tilly and whomever else it's necessary from to pay it out of ARPA, because I don't want us to get stuck with that. That's why I was asking if we could do it for just 1 year, because then we would know and have it ready to go. They could move tomorrow on stuff, on this. And then if it's approved, then we can come back and add the additional money through ARPA. But I also want to say I'm not in favor of paying for any other jail transition team out of ARPA. I think that
Yeah, there's going to have to be some budgeting getting done to plan for this. The transition is more than one person, and it's going to take a lot. And I think we all just have to be prepared and ready for that. And again, I'm not happy about it coming out of ARPA. I'm not happy about other aspects of it, because this to me is like we're gonna throw one drop into that bucket, but that bucket is huge, and we're not talking about any of that yet, and that's unfortunate because we should be. I absolutely don't want to stand in the way of something that we really have no business in. Because this is a sheriff's contract and the council has to appropriate it. And I'm just going to be okay with this as it is. I just don't want to stick my nose into this one. But I did feel like the public should hear that this is not how we were explained that the transition would work, and that this is a tip of the iceberg moment. And we all have to recognize that.
And I will point out too, as was discussed last evening, $100,000 a year is for the transition director. $10,000 is for liability insurance for that position. So it's a separation.
And I don't even, it's contractual. They might want to hire somebody, whatever. They're going to need the money.
Yes,
they're going to need the money. I don't. That's fine. Yes. I wish they would just had said toward the transition process and left it like that, because this is giving me heartburn. It's giving me heartburn. But I also know my place, and my place is not to dissect this anymore. But I do think it's important for the public to understand what's going on.
Well, and I think it's important to point out too that part of our role in all this is that we have to approve the ARPA spending plan. Council, yes, does all the nitty gritty on stuff, I guess, but we have to approve the overall plan. And so this is an unusual situation on spending that goes on in this specific case. So can we move to delay or table?
I'm going to go ahead and, because I think this is going to take a bit longer. So why don't I go ahead and make a motion to continue item 34, and I'll say until December 13th meeting. And we can always continue it further from there, but that gives Parks and Ms. Whitmer a little time to address my catalog of questions. Otherwise, I don't have any other issues on this item. So I would just move that we amend this plan to temporarily remove item 34, continue that one item until December 13th meeting, but then go ahead and approve the other items as is.
I'll second that with the comment again that I am against any other jail transition team salaries, money, whatever, being taken out of ARPA.
Okay.
Yeah. So now that we have an amendment,
we should vote on the amendment.
We should vote on it, yes. All those in favor of the amending this to continue discussion of item 34 on December 13th, 2023, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Motion passes 2-0. And now we have the regular vote.
The amended
the amended.
Amended revised version 8. When we get into double digits, we're in trouble.
Oh, yeah. Okay. So I'll call for a vote on the Monroe County, the amended Monroe County, Indiana American Rescue Plan Act Policy Revision Number 8. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Motion passes 2-0. We don't have any appointments. I want to thank everybody that came out for the Canopy of Lights last Friday. And I understand that there were people that couldn't hear, so we're going to have to talk about that.
To get that
ourselves.
speaker system fixed.
Yeah. You all heard earlier today that from Ms. Kelly that you can get vaccines and I believe still free COVID testing at the Monroe County Public Health Clinic at 333 East Miller Drive. We will have openings on boards and commissions next year, so we encourage people to get online at www.co.monroe.us and apply for those things. We continue to hold office hours 6 times a month. You can identify when those are and access them via the county calendar. And still having blood drives. Next one is December 13th from 1 to 6. Friday, December 15th from 10 to 3. There will also be 2 in January on January 3rd from 1 to 6 and Thursday, January the 4th from 10 to 3. There is still money available for those in need of special assistance through their township trustees. If you need help with rent or utilities and are income qualified, please reach out to your township trustees. That's all I have. Do you have any other announcements?
Not today.
I also want to thank everybody that provided food and donations to the Hoosier Hills Food Bank at the Canopy of Lights. We hope to make that a tradition.
Yeah, the canopies.
Your canopies at the canopy. We can all groan, can't we?
Yes, we can. I make myself.
I don't believe we have a work session.
Oh, we do. We do. Yeah, we do. Yeah, we got our plan on there and.
Dave's got something.
Yeah, and there's something else. Mr. Schilling. So Mr. Schilling, do you have something for the work session? Yes. Okay, yeah.
So, okay.
How about 11:55?
Okay, we'll be back in 10 minutes. Is that okay? We have to take a break to help with breaking the recording. We'll be back on December the 6th. Thank you, everyone.